Hi, Miss Rainwater. As you know, I'm Nick Marino, and I'm here to tell you about my ideas about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through my graffiti, which you see right here. So my thesis for the graffiti I did, and I put it right here, is that European colonialism is to blame for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict because once they gave the land that they took over, I use that in quotation marks, to the Jewish people, Jewish immigration started, which then led to Palestinian refugees who formed the PLU to fight back. And my theory here is that the Zionists and the PLU were the two main forces to start this Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and it was brought on by European colonialism, mainly Britain, as you can see here. So I'll explain this first. So Britain, right here, I tried to draw Britain, but it turned out really bad. It's working like a puppet master, and it's puppeting first the Jewish state right over here. This is the Zionists, and I use the Star of David because that's the Jewish symbol. It's also puppeting the Muslims, the Palestinians, on this side, which represents the Palestinian state. And it's really controlling what they did. And before European colonialism came in, they actually worked really well together. They had good trading, and they had friendship, and there was not too much violence. And so I have a heart, or a red string connected to their hearts, which go up, and it goes into a cloud that's called Abraham. And the reason I did this is because in their religions, they both believed that they were descendants from Abraham, the same guy who started their religion. Abraham had two sons, and the Jewish people believed that they were the offspring of one of those sons, and then the Muslims and Palestinians believed that they were the offspring of the other one, of the other son. And so they still have a similar connection through that. But when Britain took over, it started conflict. And here's why I think why. So Zionism, right here, which is where they're standing on, to kind of support my theory that Zionism was the pushing cause of this. So Zionism is a form of nationalism, which supports Jewish and Jewish culture, and they supported a Jewish national state, which became Israel. And this happened, it was happening for a while, but the main push was from World War II, because the Jews were living in a diaspora, which was, they didn't have a home state, but they were living in small colonies, which kept their heritage, lack of a better word, alive, and kept their traditions alive. And so during World War II, Hitler was killing off all the Jews, and that really supported Zionism. Not Hitler, but it made, after World War II, it made Zionism come up very popular, people saying, look at all the bad things that happened to these Jewish people, they deserve a state. And so that's when the Balfour Declaration was signed. So before the Balfour Declaration was signed, the area now known as Israel was called the British Mandate of Palestine. And the reason for this is because during World War I, British promised the Palestinian rebels that if they helped overthrow the Ottoman Empire, which was in control over that time, and sided with Germany during World War I, not II, and they said if they helped them overthrow him, then they would give them land that they could call their own and start up their own culture. They never signed anything formally, though, and that's the big reason for this conflict, was nothing was formally signed. So then Britain said and called for the Balfour Declaration, which was dated November 2nd, 1917. And it's a letter from the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary, Arthur James Balfour, and he says, and I quote, quoting a primary source document here, His Majesty's government views with favor of the establishment in Palestine of a national Jewish state for Jewish people. So this led to Jewish immigration, and the big deal with this is once Jewish immigration came, there was lots of Palestinians or Arabs and Jewish people living together, and this caused a lot of conflict because one side believed that they had the right to the land, and then the other one believed that they had the right to the land. So this led to the partition of 1947, and so this was a plan for future governments of Palestine. Palestine meaning the area, not Palestine as the Palestinians. First of all, to terminate the British mandate, so Britain was going to get out of there during this conflict, which would then create a Jewish and Arab independent state. Keep in mind that neither what would soon become Israel and the Palestinians, neither of those were involved in actually writing this. They just ended up signing it. It was mainly Britain and the United Nations at this time. So, because of this, Israel was formed on May 14th, 1948, which, just a fun fact, was exactly 64 years, 11 months, and 28 days from May 9th, 2013, which is right now. And so this led to Palestinians getting kicked out of Jerusalem. And just before I go off anymore, I just want to say, so Jerusalem recently, Palestine was they're sitting in members of the United Nations, so they're not actually a state yet, but they're just kind of seeing how that would go. And my theory for the two-state solution is that it's going to be split up. They're going to be just as split up, and nothing's going to change. And the way I show that is Jerusalem, I split up the name in half to show that, yes, they will have two independent states, but neither of them will actually have what they want, which is Jerusalem. None of them will actually have their homeland, which they believe they own, which is what I think is most of the fighting. So that just kind of shows the separation of Jerusalem. So, okay, now that I just explained that, so the partition of 1947 happened. This leads to lots of Palestinian refugees, and the Palestinian refugees were really angry that they got kicked out of their land. They were like, why? We were here before, Britain promised us this, we were told by our grandparents or our fathers, why is this happening? So they got angry, and they ended up forming a completely legal organization called the Palestinian Liberation Organization in 1964, which has the purpose of creating an independent state for Palestine. And that didn't happen for many, many years. But, so their leader, which, I'm going to say this name so badly, Yassr Arafat, I know I said that wrong. But, and he was their leader, and he really supported Palestinian states. The only problem, though, was, so the Arab people who was under him, they think of him as like a freedom fighter, like he's fighting for their rights. He is, in better words, he would be like their George Washington to us. George Washington, for us, went and fought for our freedom. He's fighting for theirs. But for people outside of Palestine, he's considered a terrorist. He's considered someone who's going against what was already stated, which is Israel. And so that's just kind of my theory, is that Zionism and the PLU, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, are the two main fighting forces here, and this is what led to the Palestinian conflict. Throughout all the promises the European colonialism made Britain, they never followed through. When the partition in 1947 happened, Britain got out of there. Britain was like, I don't want to be here anymore. They signed the Balfour Declaration, even though they already promised Palestinian rebels that they would give them land. It just doesn't make sense to me. And Britain, when they realized it didn't make sense, got out of there so that they had no responsibility or ties to them. And that's why I believe that European colonialism is to blame for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Thank you. Bye-bye.